started. So excited to have Danny joining. I have a friend who works at Zapier and was like, you have to meet Danny. He's built an entire voice agent workflow for his partner who runs a gardening business using Zapier. And I was like, what? That's amazing. And so connected with Danny. I was like, hey, Danny, this isn't a sales pitch. This isn't a marketing pitch. This is a product demo. Danny was like, bet, I want to show what I built and I'm curious to hear what other people have to say. So the goal for today, Danny will have the floor for the first half, and we've got open QA for the second half. I'll be your co-pilot for the session, Danny. So anything coming in the comments, I'll help filter for you. And for everyone who's joining, if you have questions as they come up, post them in the chat. We'll respond to them when we can, and we'll use the chat to queue up questions after the demo's done. How's that sound, Danny?
Yeah, all sounds good. Let me just share my screen so I can get this up, make sure that's all working good. So yeah, hopefully all of you can see my screen at the moment.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, as Michael said, I mean, I've actually got nothing to sell. I was supposed to have retired last year, so I literally have nothing to sell. I just can't stop building stuff. So I'm kind of going out and looking for projects and things I can do. So I'm just going to kind of show you a quick demo of something I built. Now, this is actually a little kind of automation that I built for Nadia, who's my lovely wife here. You can see now Nadia started a gardening business about a year and a half ago called Wee Beastie Gardens here in the UK. And her business kind of took off almost immediately. She just got very, very busy driving around in her van, going out and working in gardens all over the place. Now, one of the problems with that, one of the downsides, is that she got so busy doing the work and driving around from place to place that she found it really tricky to catch up with all the admin that she needed to do as part of her work. So, for example, one of the problems was, she'd go and do a job for a client. Sometimes it would take several weeks before she invoiced the client. Then it would take several weeks before she got paid. And so this kind of created all kinds of cash flow problems for her business. And it wasn't just invoices, it's also sending out quotations for new work, estimates, tasks on her to-do list, all this kind of thing. Very, very difficult to do these things when you're always mobile, always got muddy hands, driving around in a van. So I wanted to find a solution for her. So I'm going to do a demo of how it works, and then I'll show you how I put it together because it's actually really simple and has many different applications. So the starting point is here. This is a very simple form I created using a platform called Jotform. I am only on using the free plan on Jotform, so we've never had a need to go onto a paid plan here. One of the reasons I chose Jotform is because it has this ability to not only have text fields on the form, you can have a record button, and so you can record audio. And so Nadia has a link to this form on her iPhone. And so all she has to do is literally just kind of tap on that button to then record while she's driving or she's got muddy hands. So I'll do a demo here and I'll just kind of show you. So let's say I'm gonna make an invoice to one of her clients. Okay, so I'm gonna hit here record. Generate an invoice for Penny Smith for a job I did for her last Wednesday, where I mowed the lawn, cleared out the weeds from her flower bed, got rid of all the leaves and took all the waste away. And for that, I'm going to charge her £367.50. So we just stop the recording and press submit. Now, you should never do a live demo of anything. So I'm hoping this kind of goes well. But let me just kind of explain to you what that will do. So here we have Zoho Books. So this is, again, a free plan. Zoho Books, this is the accounting software that Nadia uses to create her invoices and quotations. And as you can see on the invoices screen here, there are no invoices here at the moment. So what happens is that audio recording I just made goes over to a platform called Zapier, which then transcribes that audio recording and figures out is this an invoice? Is this a job estimate? Is this a task for a to-do list? It categorizes the type of task that needs to be created and actioned. Then once it's classified, it then routes it through to the correct application. So in this case, Zoho to generate an invoice. So if I refresh this page now, I'm just going to refresh the screen and fingers crossed, we should see once the screen refreshes. There we go. Phew. We've got the invoice there for Penny Smith. So I'm just going to click on that so you can have a look at it. So there's the invoice created to Penny Smith with all the details I just created, mowed the lawn, cleared out the weeds from the flower bed with the amount and the date and all the details on there. So that's kind of gone through there. Now I'm just going to do another one. So this is Nadia's Trello board where she kind of adds all her to-do list tasks. So you can see we've got an empty list of tasks there at the moment. So I'm going to go back to the jot form. And I'm just going to show you how you don't really need to be so precise in how you give it these instructions. So let me do another recording here. Remind me to go to George Smith's house and go and check out his oak tree and make sure that it has no signs of disease. And while you're there, go and have a look at his hedge and get that sorted out. Need to get that done by next Wednesday. So I haven't explicitly said that this is a task for the to-do list. So the AI is then going to hopefully figure out what kind of instruction this is and then route it through to the correct place and then extract the data from the recording. And then hopefully we should see, before too long, we should see it then add onto her to-do list here in Trello. So we should see that coming through in just couple of seconds. Just give that a moment. There we go. Check George Smith's oak tree and hedge. If I click through and we look at the detail, it then gives us all the detail and the date when that needs to be done by. So let me just show you how this is working. So here is, if you're not familiar with Zapier, this is Zapier. It's just a kind of a workflow, a series of steps. So it starts off here with the trigger. And the trigger is just simply that jot form has been submitted. So Zapier integrates with Jotform. And as soon as you press the submit button on that form, it sets this process off. So the next step is then I'm going to take the audio recording from that form. There's the WAV file and send it over to OpenAI's Whisper model. Now, you may be familiar with OpenAI. They're the company that make ChatGPT. Well, in addition to ChatGPT, they also do a model called Whisper, which is an audio model that transcribes audio into text. Now, the reason why I chose Whisper is because I found it to be just the best AI transcription model that's out there. Doesn't matter how much background noise there is. Doesn't matter she's in Nadia's in a van or there's a lawnmower going or people talking in the background. It will just cut through all of that noise and transcribe it very, very accurately. So we're just getting a text transcription of whatever it was I said. The next step is just to generate today's date in UK format. So we have, day, month, year in the UK. And the reason why I need the date, today's date, is because you may remember I said a job I did last Wednesday. Well, how does it know when last Wednesday is if I don't give it today's date as a reference? So I'm going to use that date later. The next thing is a prompt that's sent over to ChatGPT. And it takes that transcription and then it says, the user message contains a transcription of an audio recording. Your task is to classify the recording as an instruction to create one of the following: an invoice, a job quotation, or a task for a to-do list. Your response must only be invoice, quote, or to-do. So this is the bit where I'm trying to branch it off now and figure out what kind of task this is. So the output should only be one of these three things: invoice, quote, or to-do. And then we split it into paths according to which one of those it is. So if it's an invoice, it goes down this path. If it's a quote, it goes down this path. If it's to-do task, it goes down this path. But these paths are actually really very simple. So let me show you how the path works. So this is the invoicing path. Once again, we're going to take that transcription that we recorded and we're going to say the unstructured text is a transcript of an audio recording. You will analyze the transcription to extract the following fields: the date, the name of the client, the type of service provided, and the amount being charged. And then I kind of give it today's date as a reference point. That then allows it to pull out the structured data from that transcription. So we've got the date, client name, the description, and the invoice amount, which in the next step, I can then send to Zoho Books and put those fields in there. And then the final step is simply just to send a confirmation to Nadia that the job was done with all the information so she knows it was done accurately. These other paths are pretty much identical to the invoice path. They just pull out slightly different data. That's all they're doing. So, in this case, it's pulling out data that's needed for a job estimate. In this case, it's pulling out data that's needed to create a to-do task. We have actually, I've developed this a little bit further now because one of the things I wanted to do was be able to get approval from Nadia before the invoice went out. Um, we were just getting it to just send the invoice straight off to the client as soon as she dictated it. But I wanted it to read back the details of the invoice before it actually got sent off. Now, you may think that the reason I'm doing that is just in case the AI made a mistake, but actually, the AI generally does not make mistakes. It's Nadia sometimes, the human error is much more likely than the AI misinterpreting something. So it was just that kind of last stop check to make sure. So you can see this is really simple. You do not need to be any kind of coder to set up something like this. And it has applications in so many fields, not just gardeners, anyone that isn't tethered to a desk. People working in warehouses, property surveyors, estate agents, doctors, medics, chefs, you name it, anyone where it's more convenient to speak rather than sitting there trying to type something fiddly on a little screen. You can now actually do all of your admin work simply by speaking the instructions into your mobile phone. So I hope that's been of interest to people. I hope it's kind of sparked your curiosity to go and build something similar. And I'm very happy to take some questions.
That was great. Thank you so much for that overview demo, Danny. And starting with the demo, that already got questions going in the chat of like, how does this work? Tell us more. And so maybe could you start talking about how did you start using Zapier? One question we had in the chat was, hey, there's a couple different automation platforms or no code platforms, and Zapier can be expensive in different ways. And so what made you choose Zapier? And yeah, and to build this workflow.
I mean, the boring answer to that question is mainly familiarity. I've been using Zapier for a very long time for all kinds of different applications. And so it was the one I was used to. And so I think there probably are now other tools and other platforms that would work very well for this kind of application. But when you just want to go and build something and you don't want to have that whole learning curve of learning a new platform, you turn to the thing that you're familiar with. I mean, Zapier have actually recently brought down the cost. I don't know if you know, they had quite a big reduction in pricing, which has made it a lot more affordable. But yeah, I find Zapier to be a really solid platform. So many integration. I don't want to end up sounding like an ad for Zapier, but yeah, they have so many integrations, and their customer service is absolutely spot on. They are so helpful if you need any support. So yeah, that's the boring answer to that question, I'm afraid.
That's okay. If it works for you, and especially when these platforms keep updating functionality, might as well use them while they're there. So next question we had was about the rules engine for splitting into paths. So I know you showed this one and how this works. If someone's starting from scratch to create that filtering or that logic gate, could you explain a little bit more how you came up with that? Is it sitting down with your wife to figure out what tool she needs and kind of working up from there? Did you design one path and then you split it into paths when you realized you needed more functionality? Tell us a little bit more. If you're staring at a blank canvas, building up this rule path for the first time, how do you go about that?
Yeah, I mean, I find this whole process quite instinctive now. I've been playing around with these language models since I think it was kind of long before ChatGPT, so like before early 2022. And when I started using them, they were kind of really flaky. We were not getting accurate responses coming out of them. You had to prompt so carefully to get what you wanted from them, and even then, they would hallucinate and come out with all kinds of things. I mean, I can't even remember the last time I've worked on a project where the accuracy of the output has even been an issue. They're all in an arms race now to keep improving these models and get them to be smarter and smarter. I got to be honest with you, I don't even need them any smarter than they are at the moment because they can do pretty much everything I need them to do. But one of the things that I have learned is that it's a very good idea not to try and get the model to do too much at one time. So, for example, don't get it to classify the transcript and also pull out the data that's needed for the invoice, or break those down into smaller chunks, and you generally get much more reliable output. They also have a very good function in Zapier when you're working with ChatGPT, which is, rather than have that kind of prompt where you've got like a sort of a chat back and forth, they actually have an action step to extract data, so you can define the variables that you want to get back and explain what values those variables should have. Excuse me. So yeah, I think it's just kind of become, I mean, I do come from a coding background, and so I guess my brain works that way. But it also just starts to become very instinctive as to how to get the best from these models.
Yeah, and it's very, very human in terms of how the attention mechanisms work with transformers, where you can't give it too much at once or it'll dilute it. So it's just like a human. It's like, hey, single tasking is still the best way to get highest
See that,
accuracy.
Michael, that's such a good point, and that's something I found right from the very early stages of working with these models, is treat them like a child. Be very clear. Don't leave room for ambiguity in how you're instructing them. Keep things in nice, simple, small little chunks that can be processed and without taxing them too much. I found that a very good metaphor to use when you're working with these models, is treat them like children.
Yeah, it's great, great metaphor just for being able to understand how to start prompting, what is too many tasks. So appreciate you doing that walkthrough. Next question we have is using so many different tools, how do you establish budget as you build out these workflows? And I know you were like, hey, we're using as many free APIs and tools as possible, so I'm sure that's part of it. But tell us a little bit more about monitoring usage. That can be either
Yeah.
through Zapier or when you get a workflow going.
I mean, on that particular project, there is next to no cost at all. Jotform was free. Zapier I was using anyway, and so it just kind of used the credits. You do lots of commercial work with Zapier, and I think I have something like about 500,000. What do they call them? Not zaps, the tasks per month. So I don't go anywhere near my usage limits on Zapier anyway. So I didn't really count that as any cost. And then the use of a Whisper is free. There is no cost for the Whisper model. And then the instructions to ChatGPT, or the model I'm using on ChatGPT, is O4 Mini. And I think I calculated that each time Nadia generates a task or an invoice or whatever it may be on that, it costs somewhere in the region of 0.00003 cents. That, I mean, it's negligible. It really is. Just the cost on that project wasn't an issue at all. I'm working on a project at the moment, which is much more complex and has a lot of different moving parts, and cost has been a much bigger issue there. We've had to think of things like data storage. So we've looked at Airtable and all kinds of different third-party integrations that have come into there. And yeah, it's just a question of sitting down and doing the research. The great thing, of course, is now we've got all these amazing research tools, AI research tools, that we can go out there and use them, do all these comparisons and evaluations, and it just makes all of that process so much easier. Um,
Yeah,
so
it's crazy how quickly prices are dropping. And just between you have the open source, closed source war, you have new models and optimizations for each platform. So it's amazing to see how accessible these are.
But Michael, just on that question of cost, I mean, this current project that I'm working on, it's actually for a bridal salon that's in my local area. Okay, now what they needed, they were basically using Excel as their database, their CRM, as so many businesses do. For their accounting software, everything was done on Excel. Okay, which is never a very good idea, but a lot of businesses end up in that situation. And what they really needed was a completely custom coded solution that allows for all the kind of back end automation for their business. Now, just a year ago, to go and get that built would have required a team of people, and their budget would have needed to be at least £50,000 for the cost of putting that together. They're now able to do, I'm now building it for them for a fraction of that cost and in a fraction of that time. I mean, the degree to which these AI tools have empowered me and many others to be able to help businesses like that is just incredible, absolutely incredible.
That's amazing. And there's more time spent, like you mentioned, using and playing with the platform than in the media, like the tedious debugging, trying to get integrations to work. You can spend more time on the more fun
Yeah.
tasks in building. And so, yeah, there's a question in the chat about how long does it take you to build something like this assistant for your wife's business from just start blank canvas all the way through working with all the tools? What's the average time for a workflow like that?
Well, so the whole process of building that for Nadia, I think, took no more than 15, 20 minutes from start to finish. But without wanting to sound too immodest, I don't know if you know the famous story of a woman that asked Picasso to create an illustration, and he charged her a ridiculous amount of money, and she said, "But it only took you 5 minutes." He said, "No, madame, it took me 20 years." Well, yeah, all of my prior experience allows me to build things like this in 20 minutes. So yeah, it does help to have built lots of things like this before, because now you can just kind of sit down and say, oh yeah, I can see that whole thing in my head, and just click, 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 and it's done. It's really easy.
Makes sense. So if you've 20 years of experience, you can do it in 20 minutes. If you're just starting off, block out an hour, a couple hours, and have fun exploring these platforms too. It's very fun to see what works and what doesn't work. And if you go in trying to be right, getting everything right, you're just going to get frustrated, especially from like a beginner mindset perspective.
Well, I've learned so much more from all the mistakes and errors I've made than everything that goes right. So that whole process of trying this out and learning and messing up is the best learning experience you can have. It really is.
Yeah. We have people really enjoyed the demo and they were just asking, do you have another project you might be able to demo if it's a work in progress or something else on Zapier? No pressure. We've got other questions in the chat, but yeah, someone asked if there was something else you wanted to show, the current
Well,
project or another workflow.
I got other things I could talk about, not necessarily show, because it would take me time to get them up, and I also can't be sure whether the
Yeah,
clients would be
we'll just talk
comfortable
through it.
about.
Talk whatever you can share. Let's just hear. Yeah, let's hear another.
But yeah, so a long-standing client I've been working with for many years now, and nearly a decade now, is a law firm. So they're a criminal law firm based in London. Very, very busy law firm. So these guys receive somewhere in the region of 150 to 200 new inquiries every day from people who have just been arrested. They're in trouble with the police, and they need help. Okay. And so they have a team of people, or they did have a team of people at the law firm whose job was to triage these inquiries. So they'd look at the email that came through, they'd try and figure out what offence has actually been committed here, how serious is that offence. So the reason they want to know that is because they're trying to figure out what are the likely fees that would be earned from a case like this. And they're also trying to figure out which lawyer at the firm is best suited to handle that case. And that was a task that took a team of 3 people all day, every day, just triaging those inquiries. And I was working with them and I looked at this process and I thought, well, it would be interesting to see whether AI could now take on some of that task. And so I built an automation for, again, in Zapier. It just, as soon as the email came in, it classified it, calculated the offence, worked out what the likely fees would be, worked out which lawyer on the team would be, did exactly the same job as the team, really. Need a little bit of training. We had to give it some data to be able to accurately do that. So we ran it as a trial for 3 months with the AI and the human team, both triaging all the inquiries. And then we had them blind evaluated at the end of that 3 month process to see which was more accurate. And the AI won. It was significantly more accurate than the human team. So what it's meant now is that human team have now all been freed to go and actually work on client cases and not have to do this really boring, dull task of triaging these inquiries every day. So the degree to which it frees up humans to go and do something more interesting. So yeah, that was a project I worked on recently, and I actually did a project for a big university. I better not say the name, but a big university in America, one of your Ivy League universities. They have a very big investment fund, so they've got all this kind of money that they invest in various things, and they have a whole team of people where, very similar to the law firm actually, is what they're evaluating, what they're triaging is investment opportunities rather than criminals. And so they're trying to work out, when somebody comes to them with a pitch, is this something that's suitable for us? And so did the same thing again for them and just kind of freed up people from that task. So yeah, so a lot of projects like that, really, just kind of using AI to make evaluations and classify and interpret data in a way that was previously only possible by humans. That's the kind of thing I've been working on most.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Being able to use natural language to triage. I think a lot of people when they hear AI, they think bias, but we also forget that there's a lot of subjective human biases. So if you have three people in the law firm triaging, all it takes is like waking up grumpy, not having your coffee or not getting your lunch, and that can create a whole after effect for how you triage things. So being able to have natural language to triage things coming in, at least it's a standard system that you can then evaluate afterwards.
Yeah. So, in fact, one voice project that I'm going to be working on very soon, there's an organization near me where they've got a huge plant library. So they have these huge gardens. They're growing all these different species of plants, and they now want to get all that information into a database. And so they've got a team of volunteers. And what they were going to do was give them all iPads with Excel on there to type in all this information into it. But these are all volunteers, and most of them elderly. And so we're just going to basically make that all voice input using AI to interpret the information that they're gathering, make sure that it's in the correct format and consistent and all those kind of things. So yeah, that'll be another voice project that I start working on soon. So, but yeah, I mean, I was supposed to have retired a year ago, and I can't stop building stuff. It's so addictive. It's crazy, because all of the elements of this work that I used to find frustrating and so time consuming and repetitive have just all been taken away from me now because I can just get AI to do all the boring stuff.
Yeah, it's too fun when you can keep building more than you ever could, and with also more functionality with less work and less time. And so we have two more questions, and we'll wrap up. One question from Sean is around monetization. What's your advice for beginning to monetize these skills? If there's a lower barrier to entry and quicker for speed, does that change how you approach different client deals, or for someone who's just starting out? So, what are some thoughts about monetizing automation work for companies?
Yeah, it's hard for me to answer that question, I think, because of where I am in my life and career. I mean, for a very long time, I've been in a very fortunate position that my number one criteria when I'm pricing a job is how much am I going to enjoy working on it. So in the way I price things generally is I have in my head a kind of a base hourly or daily rate that I kind of want to achieve. And then I either add or subtract to that based on how much am I going to enjoy it? How much do I like the people I'm going to be working with? How much is it likely to lead to more work of that kind? There's a whole load of kind of different factors so it's a bit more of an art than a science in how I price these things up. But there are so many businesses and organizations out there that need people with these skills. There are no shortage. I mean, this bridal salon that I'm working with at the moment, even though I would consider what I'm doing for them simple to do, they don't have the in-house skills or resources to be able to do something themselves. But they wouldn't have the in-house resources to be able to build something in Zapier, just a kind of a simple Zap. A lot of small businesses don't. So yeah, so there is still a lot. I think it'll be a very long time before people who can build this kind of stuff, that there's not work available for them. So yeah,
Yeah,
I think
yeah. There's a
someone.
more demand there. Last question, just quick one or two liner. If you could go back in time to give yourself one piece of advice, if you were just starting off, what's one thing you've learned the hard way that you would share? Just one piece of advice.
Oh, God. Well, I think so. I started my first software company in 1983. So that's a very long time I'm going back. And obviously, things have changed so much in that time. I mean, I used to get excited with coding in BASIC when we had like if then else statements. That used to kind of get me excited thinking the computers could make decisions. If I'd only known then what I could do now, I mean, crikey. I think the only advice I would have given my younger self is that this principle I have now of picking projects based on how much I'm going to enjoy them, I wish I'd done that from day one. I think you don't have the confidence to be able to do that from a very young age because you're worried, am I going to earn enough money? Am I going to develop my career? All these kind of things. But actually, I found that having that as my kind of what's the word I'm looking for? As my kind of star that I follow is just like make sure I'm working on stuff I enjoy doing. It improves the quality of my work. I'm not very good at doing things that I don't enjoy doing. However much money they pay me, it's just the money is not enough of an incentive to make me really put my heart and soul into that project. So I think that's the advice I would have given myself at a young age: is do what makes you happy.
Amazing advice. The chat is lighting up. They appreciate it. Where's the best place for people to connect with you? LinkedIn, X.
LinkedIn, Danny Richmond, I think is my LinkedIn profile, or
Sounds
I'm
good.
still I'm still on Twitter and X at Danny Richmond, so you can connect with me on there if you want to. So yeah, always happy to chat to folks, and any advice, any help. I'm always happy to help people out. So yeah,
Sounds great. Thanks so much for making the time, Danny. We appreciate it. We'll send the recording afterwards for everyone. Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining, Danny.
great talking to you. Thanks, Michael.